Good morning and welcome back to Planet Doug and Planet Doug's morning coffee story time, I guess. Because today is the beginning of, today is a road trip. I'm in the city of Pekanbaru in Sumatra, and I'm staying at a friend's house here in Pekanbaru, so that explains the unusual setting and the unusual coffee mug. I'm having my first coffee of the morning. Oh, that's nice. And this friend of mine moves back and forth between Pekanbaru and Padang on Sumatra. So we arranged that when I came back from Malaysia, and instead of flying directly to Padang and then going to Bukit Tinggi using, an airport shuttle or something like that, he said that he was driving from Pekanbaru to Padang on like tomorrow or today on this day. And if I fly into Pekanbaru instead, I could come stay at his house, meet his family, have that whole experience, which has been very, very interesting. And then I can get in his SUV with him, and then he will drive to Padang and pass us through Bukit Tinggi, and then he will drop me off at the place where I stored my bicycle. And the place where I stored my bicycle is actually his wife's family's house in this village on the slope of Mount Merapi, the big volcano just outside Bukit Tinggi. And it turns out that I'll be able to stay in that house, in this village on the volcano for a few days if I like. And then I can just sort of live there and explore the area, do some riding, around the volcano and sort of the countryside around Bukit Tinggi. So that's sort of what's going on. So today is the day of the road trip. And of course, I hope to shoot a bit of video of that road trip. And I'm pretty excited about that because this entire road from Pekanbaru to Bukit Tinggi, I've done that by bicycle. I mean, that was, a big part of the bike trip that I just finished. It was a very short bike trip, to be honest, in terms of the number of kilometers covered, but it was certainly a really interesting, enjoyable, and a challenging time for me to ride my bike up into the mountains to Bukit Tinggi. So I remember this road very clearly. I feel like I remember every curve, every hillside, every town. Everything along that road is sort of like burned into my memory right now from the bike ride, and to be able to see that entire road again while sitting in the passenger seat of an SUV and drive down this road and up the hills and around the curves and see everything again from a new perspective. I think that's going to be really, really interesting. I've heard other bike tourists, like cyclists who go around the world by bicycle, they often say the worst thing for them is backtracking. They don't like to ride their bike along the road and then turn around and ride that road again. Because if you go back, like if you're backtracking, it feels like you're not making any forward progress. So all the effort you put into cycling in this direction, you haven't gained anything because now you're cycling back to where you started from. So they don't like to backtrack. But I'm different because I love backtracking, because I love to see the same road a second time, particularly if you're seeing it in some kind of a new perspective. Of course, I'm not backtracking by bicycle. I'm backtracking by SUV, which is completely different. But still, I like seeing an area a second time. I see things in a new light, and I find that really interesting. So that is what is happening today. But in this video, what I wanted to do was sit here with my cup of coffee. It's pretty early in the morning, 6:15, I guess. Yeah, 6:15 here in Sumatra. And I think my hosts are still sleeping. We're not going to leave until 9 or 10 o'clock. Apparently my host is a very fast driver. So there's no need to leave at the crack of dawn. We can leave as late as 10 in the morning, and we're still going to Zoom there pretty quickly. So yeah, there's no urge to get on the road early. But the environment here is so new to me. Everything was so interesting. And I had such an action-packed day yesterday flying here. As soon as I woke up this morning at whatever it was, 5:30, I just popped out of bed. I just wanted to get the day started. So here I am, while I think everyone else in the house is still sleeping. Yeah, I didn't shoot any video yesterday. When I flew from Kuala Lumpur to Pekanbaru. It's a short flight, about 1 hour, but it is an international flight, and you're going through 2 international airports with all that entails. So despite being a short flight, it was filled with events, and it was actually exhausting. I was just exhausted by the end of it. But, and it's nothing unusual. Everyone knows what it's like to go to an airport, check in for your flight, the departure lounge, immigration, customs, all the stages. Everybody knows what that is like. And I don't know, I wasn't in the mood to film all of that along the way. But I thought I could go back and tell the story from a Planet Doug point of view, which means, of course, a lot of very strange little details. So it started at the Nanyang Hotel in Kuala Lumpur. That's where I was staying. Really nice hotel for me. Great room, on the small side for most people, perhaps, but perfect for me. An old vintage hotel, maybe dating from the 80s, from the 90s, maybe 90s. I'm not really sure. I didn't find out when the building was built, but it's an older building. Has that vintage quality to the hallways, to the furniture, to the architecture. Really, really nice people at the front desk. The night staff and the day staff, all the staff were incredibly friendly and helpful, and I really appreciated that. So anyway, that's where my trip started. I packed up all of my stuff, and then I went from there on foot to the MRT station, Pasar Seni, and then from Pasar Seni, it's one MRT stop, or LRT, I guess, to KL Central, the main transportation hub in Kuala Lumpur, and there you can get an airport bus. Takes you directly to KLIA. And that's what I planned on doing. You can also take an express train, which is quite a bit more expensive, but the bus is 15 ringgit. It used to be 12. I remember the days when it was 11 or 12 ringgit, but in the time that I've been in this part of the world, it's gone up to 15 ringgit now. And that's kind of where my adventures started, the Planet Doug style adventures. Because normally at this place at KL Central where you get the airport buses, normally there's a whole bunch of buses just waiting. The doors are open, people are sitting on the bus, the luggage compartment doors are open, and you go up to a counter, and it doesn't seem to matter which counter you go to. There's like many different bus companies, but you can buy a ticket from any company and get on any bus, basically. But I always seem to end up on a Sky Bus, maybe because it's the biggest or something, but there's a booth right there. As soon as you come down the escalator, Sky Bus ticket booth, you buy your ticket there. And then there was a big, bright red Sky Bus, airport bus, sitting right there and waiting. It was right there in front of the Sky Bus ticket window. So I went to the Sky Bus ticket window, 15 ringgit, I got my ticket. But the bus wasn't open. Like the doors weren't open. There was nobody inside the bus. And there's all the potential passengers, all the people who bought a ticket were sort of crowded around the bus waiting. And I think I saw a sign that said the bus was going to leave at 1 p.m. And I'd never seen this before, because normally there's just buses waiting all the time, and they just fill up with people, and as soon as it's full, it goes. And then the next bus fills up. As soon as it's full, it goes. I've never seen a scheduled bus waiting for a 1 p.m. departure before, so there was something different going on. But yeah, so a lot of people were there, a lot of people were waiting, and that adds a little bit. I really like it when the bus is just sitting there waiting. It removes a small amount of stress, because you buy your ticket, you go to the bus, you throw your bag in the luggage compartment, underneath the bus, you get in and you take a seat. And you could wait there for 20 minutes until the bus fills up, but you're just sitting in your chair and you're chatting with your seat partner and looking at your Google Maps and planning your trip, doing whatever it is you're doing, and it's a very stress-free kind of experience. But this changed everything, that the bus was closed, like it wasn't open, so everybody was sort of gathering around the bus on the sidewalk, and it's a very narrow sidewalk right here, and everybody had a lot of luggage, huge piles of suitcases and things, all different sizes and different styles, and everybody is like, you know, oh, I got to get on the bus, and I got to put my luggage in there, and there's a certain tension in the air. So I joined this crowd, and actually when I got there, there were a lot of people already, but most of them were sitting on benches along the side with all their luggage around them. I went right to the bus, and I put my bag right beside the bus, right beside the first door to the luggage compartment, because I've been there lots of times, and I know that when the guys come to open up the bus, they come straight to the luggage compartment and they open up these doors, joom, joom, and I can't get on the bus until I put my luggage in there. It's all kind of self-serve. They don't do that for you. You heave your own luggage into the compartment. So I put my bag right where it needed to go, and I thought as soon as the doors open, toss my bag in there, get on the bus, and away we go. And then I started waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was hot. Start sweating, you know, and it's like, oh, I wish I could get on the bus. But at least I'm right there at the door. I could be the first one on the bus. I never will be. I can't compete when it comes to stuff like that. But anyway, I'm right there. I'm ready. And then it gets close to departure time. And suddenly a woman, I think was from Skybus at the time, I wasn't sure. She was further down the sidewalk, further down the road. She's over there. She starts shouting something about one, shouting, shouting, shouting. And all the people around me with all their luggage just go rushing off in that direction. It's like, okay, now what the heck is going on? And it turns out that this giant, bright red Skybus that has huge lettering all across the side, you know, Skybus, that's not the bus that was going to the airport. And this woman was saying, oh, everybody who's waiting for the 1 p.m. Skybus bus, it's coming now, you know, come over here. And then this silver gray, like had no markings on it at all, another bus pulled up where this woman was, where she was shouting, and that was the Skybus bus to the airport. So me and everyone else, we were all waiting beside the wrong bus. The bus we were waiting beside wasn't going anywhere. That was the bus we were supposed to get on. So now, of course, you know, people are sort of like coiled and ready to go. And as soon as this woman started shouting and people, you know, moved in her direction, I think a lot of other people didn't even know what was going on, but they figure, oh, if other people are going that way, we better go that way too. And everybody just thunders off in that direction towards that bus. So there I am, you know, all my careful plans to be right beside the luggage compartment, ready to put all of that was out the window. Now I'm on the outside of this giant carnival scene, because the sidewalk at that point was even narrower, because this is where all the ticket offices were. They took up half the sidewalk, so there's like a little bit of sidewalk left. When this bus pulled up, it had to pull in on a tight corner, and the front of the bus had to swing way out over the sidewalk, because these buses are huge. And in order for it to line up on the curb, it had to turn into the sidewalk, and the front end of the bus went over the sidewalk and actually had to push through the crowd of people and sort of push them out of the way, like a wave or something, because everybody had to kind of like lean back, and then this huge bus would just kind of like swing by their chest as it came up. Like, it was very tight spaces. And now I'm on the other side of the door to go into the bus, but I have to get past that point to get to the luggage compartment, if you see what I mean. So suddenly all the people who had no luggage were already in line at the door, and all the people who were rushed ahead of me, they were throwing their luggage into the luggage compartment, and now they were getting into the lineup. So I had to somehow get through this thick crowd of people, the lineup of people waiting to get into the bus itself. Got to get through them and then into the luggage area where everyone else was having a lot, because there's so many people all getting on at the same time. Like, it wasn't staggered out as it normally was. Everybody was doing it at the same time, and they have these huge suitcases, and they're doing it themselves. So of course, the very first people, they just take their huge suitcase, toss it into the front, and then they leave. But other people now, they have no room. I mean, you need an expert to actually push the suitcases into position and stack them up and make room. And if you just leave 100 people to just do it themselves, it was just total chaos. And everybody's in there like a rugby scrum with their suitcases and their bags and struggling. It was just like, oh, this is not the way I wanted this journey to start. You know, this is way too much stress, way too much tension, just sweat, hot, humid. It was like, okay, this is how this trip is going to go. So that was how the trip began. On the positive side, as far as the airport bus goes, when I got on, for some reason, I was like way back in the pack. I'd finally put my bag in. I found a space for it. I had to rearrange all the other luggage just so I could make room for mine. And I put it in there. So I was pretty late getting on the bus, and yet there was a seat available right at the very front. There's like one guy sitting beside the window, and the very front seat, the one beside him, was free. So, yeah, I kind of made eye contact with him and sort of said, do you mind if I sit here? And he said in very good English, no, I don't mind at all, have a seat. So I sat down there. That was great. So despite all the trouble, I got a perfect seat right at the front of the bus. And then my seatmate was a very interesting guy. He was from Malaysia, and he was from Kalimantan, he told me. He was a dentist, a young dentist, like a new dentist, who kind of a recent graduate in a way from a dental school. And one of his favorite singers, or one of his favorite bands, had put on a concert in KL. So he had flown by himself. He had flown from his hometown, wherever he lived in, Kalimantan, flown to Kuala Lumpur, gone to this concert, and now he was flying back home again. And he spoke excellent English. So we had a nice long chat. Actually, I got very lucky with seatmates in general, because when I flew from Padang to Kuala Lumpur, my seatmate then was a man from Japan. And he was very open to conversation as well. And we had a nice long chat the whole way into Kuala Lumpur. And now I was leaving Kuala Lumpur, and I had another very chatty seatmate, and we had a good chat. And the main thing I learned that was interesting is that in Malaysia, if you are a dentist, when you graduate from dental school, you have to do at least 1 year of government service. And I assume this is at some kind of a government clinic that offers dental services to the community. I assume this is a government program designed so that the population at large has access to dental services. So they tell all the dentists, prospective dentists, that when you graduate, like even if your family runs, high-end, expensive dental clinic that makes a lot of money, you can go work at that private clinic eventually, but the first year of your dental career, you must work, I assume at a much reduced salary, at one of these through a government service thing. It's a little bit like serving in the military. Some countries, every man at a certain age, and I don't know, maybe women too, but generally men, where they have to serve at least 2 years in the military, or 1 year, whatever it is. Some countries have this system, and they have it in Malaysia for dentists. And he said it's optional for 3 years. So you must do 1 year, but you could also get a contract for 2 years or 3 years. And then 3 years would be the maximum. And I think my seatmate had been doing it for 2 or 3 years. So he did it longer than the initial first year. So that was kind of interesting. It's always interesting to sit beside someone from a field, like the dental field, because they would have all kinds of interesting stories and insight and a special perspective on, the job that they do in that whole world. You learn all kinds of interesting things. So that was great to get on the bus and meet him. And then the bus, no trouble at all, went to the airport, got my little luggage trolley, and trundled on into the airport. It's a bit of a journey to get from the outside of KLIA to the international departures. It's up on the 3rd floor at the far end of a huge shopping mall, and I've got to go up level after level. In the final level, there isn't one of those walkways, so then you have to go find the elevator, assuming you have luggage and you've got one of those trolleys, you know. You could go up an escalator, but the trolleys, at a certain point, it's more difficult to get it up to the 3rd floor where international departures is located. So that was a bit of an effort to get there, but I got there. And then a few other adventures because I had checked in online, and I've been a little bit confused about this whole system for quite a while now, because I booked the ticket online and then there's a button right there that says check in. And I figured that can't hurt, right? Like, why not check in advance? You've confirmed your seat. You've told the airline you're definitely coming. Seems like the thing to do. So I always check in advance online. But then when I get to the airport, I have luggage to check in as well. So then I get into the usual lineup to, you know, check in your bag. And when I do that, the airline clerk checks me in all over again. Like, they check my bag, but they also check me in and issue a boarding pass and go through all the normal procedures. So I never understood what was the point of me checking in online when they are going to check me in all over again. Like, I'm checking in twice or something. Anyway, I never quite understood the system. But this time, I get to the airport and I see everyone doing self-check-in for baggage. And I'd thought about doing it myself as well, because I'd never done that, I don't think. I think I tried to do it once. Yeah, I did it once. Some sort of a creature up there making noise. I did it once, I remember. I went up to one of the machines and I figured out the whole system, and I printed out my own luggage tags, put it on the luggage, and I was very proud of myself. It wasn't easy to do. It was a whole scene because people are crowded around these machines to check in their own bags. But when they're doing it, they have their luggage with them. And that changes everything. Like, imagine bank ATMs. There could be 5 ATMs, and they can be quite close together. And then people stand in a line at each ATM, no problem. But imagine every single person in that lineup had 3 giant suitcases around them. Or it's a family of 5 people all checking in at the same time, and they have this mountain of luggage. So they're all crowding around one of these little machines with their luggage, and that changes everything because you can't move. I mean, there's luggage carts, luggage piled up everywhere. And so it was a bit of an effort to get it all done, but I did it by the first time, put my own tags on my luggage, very proud of myself. But then you had to drop it off somewhere. So I got into a lineup to drop it off. And when I got to the front of the line, there was an airline clerk there, and they checked me in all over again. They actually took the tags off my bags. They ripped them off, printed out new ones, and put new ones on, and then gave me a boarding pass. So all of my effort checking in myself, getting my own luggage tags, they just tore it off anyway and put on new ones. So I thought, okay, what was the point of me doing any of that? So this time I was thinking I would do it again, but then when I got into the departures area, all these machines were just jammed with people. It was total chaos from the outside. I just didn't want to deal with that. So I tried to find the official check-in line where they check you in. I didn't want to get my own luggage tags. I was just going to go into the normal lineup and let them do it because I figured they're going to do it anyway. So what's the point of me doing all this? But then I get to the Air Asia baggage, you know, the official line, but they have it blocked off. There's a guy standing there, and he's got the poles and the cords that make the lineups that you go through. He had sealed it off, and then everyone who came up to him to go into that line with their luggage, he would ask them and say, "Oh, can I see your ticket, please?" And they show them a ticket on their phone or whatever, and he says, "Oh no, please, do it yourself." He was sending everyone away and saying, go get your own luggage tags, and then go to another lineup where you just drop off your bags. Basically, AirAsia is now pushing that system very hard, and the only people allowed to get into the assisted check-in were very specific people who had a reason, a valid reason to do with their luggage or special circumstances that they need help from the professionals. Everyone else, sorry, buddy, go do it yourself. We don't want to spend the money to hire staff to do it for you. So you go do it yourself. So I went up there and I was hoping he would look at me, oh, dumb foreigner, he doesn't know what he's doing. And then I would kind of look confused and he would open up the line and say, okay, you go in, they'll do it for you. But no, he looked at my ticket and on my phone, he says, no, you have to go do it yourself. So, and I did say to him, says, well, I was going to do it myself, but the machines out there are just a madhouse. I mean, how in the world can you even get close to these machines with all the people? And he said, well, there are some other machines. If you go around this way, around the corner to the back, there's a quieter area. So, shh, don't tell anyone. But if you go there, it'll be there are less crowds. So he was not buying what I was selling, and he would not let me into that lineup. So anyway, I went off to go do it myself, and I found an area that was relatively quiet, and as long as there isn't chaos around you, as long as you're feeling okay, you're not exhausted, you're thinking straight, you can figure it out. You just go through the system, there's prompts on the screen. Touch the screen to start, scan your boarding pass, and they say, is this you? Is this the passenger that is checking in? It was my name. Yes, that's me. How many bags are you checking in? 1 bag. And, you work the system until it finally spits out that long, luggage tag. And so I worked through the whole system, and in the end, I got it done. And then, of course, you have to figure out how to peel it off and then wrap it around and sort of stick it together. And I guess the first time you do anything like that, you have to figure things out. I wasn't quite sure where to start peeling it apart, and I saw some little labels on there that seemed to be separate, and I thought, okay, do I take those off? Are those my receipts? What are those? Do I unpeel the whole thing or only part of it? But you eventually figure all this out, and then I wrapped it around the handles of my luggage bag, and I was good to go and very proud of myself. But then more adventures began because I had to find a lineup where you drop off your own bags, right? So you got to go looking for the international baggage drop off for AirAsia, and I had trouble finding those. I found one that was open, but I got in the line, but then the guy at the front seemed to be having a lot of trouble. He put his bag on the conveyor belt, and then he was just sort of standing there looking at it, waiting for it to, take his bag away, and nothing was happening, and I put his bag on, and he was waiting, and he took his bag off. But anyway, this whole lineup didn't seem to be working at all, so I left from there, went to another area, but I guess you got into this huge lineup, and then to the left was self-check-in, and to the right was assisted check-in, and people were getting into the same lineup leading to that point, but then they had to split left or right. But people kept getting in the wrong one. They would head to the left, and then there'd be an AirAsia employee there looking at them and saying, oh, you don't have luggage tags yet. This is the self-check-in. You're in the wrong lineup. You're supposed to go to the assisted one. You're supposed to turn right, not left. But now these people are ahead of you in this narrow lineup with a huge luggage thing, covered in suitcases. How in the world are they going to get out of there? It's not like they can back up, because we've all moved in behind them, and now they have to undo the lineup and kind of let them out. Again, it was all very chaotic, I thought. And I'm working my way through this lineup, and it's one of those, Disneyland things, where you go this way, then this way, then this way. The lineup zigs and zags all the way to the front. And then I'm working my way through the zigging and the zagging, and I get to one of the zigs, and then there's another clerk standing there, and he asks to see my boarding pass on my phone. So I show him, and he says, oh, counter W, please, go to counter W. And he opens up the lineup and pulls me out of that lineup and says, I have to go to counter W for some reason. And he seemed to be picking out people at random and sending them to counter W. And I think it was because where I was very, very crowded, a lot of people. And I guess counter W for self check-in was on the other side of the airport, and nobody knows about it, nobody goes there. So he was trying to ease congestion by taking some people and pushing them over to counter W. So I was like, all right, because I've been in this lineup for a long time making progress, but now he kicked me out of the lineup and I had to go to counter W. So I go to counter W and I'm in a brand new lineup with people in front of me. And of course, most people were doing this for the first time. Everybody was having trouble. They're at the front, and then you have to pick up this handheld scanner, and you got to go through the whole system to drop off your own bags. And no matter how simple they make these things, we're human beings. We're dummies. We're not going to get it. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to know what to do. And of course, everyone at the airport is of every age imaginable. They're from 20-year-olds who know all about technology and are comfortable, all the way up to 80-year-olds who are just fumbling around and have no idea what they're doing. And now they're being asked to go through all this machine stuff and push a bunch of buttons and grab scanners and scan the right code and choose options on a menu on a computer. I mean, yeah, they struggle. They struggle with that. And then you get people who just aren't considerate, because normally you have airport staff taking care of these things, but now everyone is supposed to do it themselves. So the people ahead of me, there were some women ahead of me, and they had two of these huge luggage carts filled with suitcases, and they pushed up to the baggage check-in, and they pulled off all their suitcases, and they went through the system. It took them a while to figure it out, but they figured it out, and then their bags were gone, and then they just turned around and left. And they left their luggage carts, those huge airport luggage carts, they just left them there. They didn't remove them. So now I'm behind these empty luggage carts, and my way is blocked because people would just abandon their luggage carts everywhere. Like they wouldn't take them away to the luggage cart area. So it's like, oh, for Pete's sake, So yeah, you got to fight, you got to move all these things out of the way, and then you got to get to the front. And then I made a mistake. Again, I'm doing this for the first time, and I was so focused on the luggage because I just printed out the luggage tag. It was all about the luggage QR code. You had to open up the luggage QR code on your phone, scan the QR code for your luggage, not the QR code for your boarding pass. You had to distinguish between the two. Open up the QR code for your luggage. You have to show that one. So I was thinking only about luggage. And then I got to the front of the line. I moved all the luggage carts out of the way. I'm at the front of the line, and then I'm reading the instructions, and it says, you grab the scanner. There's a handheld scanner, like at a cash register. You grab the scanner, and it says scan the code. So, I grabbed the luggage tag from my bag, and nothing. Nothing I could do. There's like different types of, like on the luggage tag, there's one that they're different sizes. There's and different orientations. There's all these different, they're not QR codes. I guess they're barcodes on the luggage tag. And there's a barcode oriented this way. And then I assume it's the same barcode, but oriented this way. And then there's one above that that's really thin instead of really thick. And I'm trying all three of them. I was like, And I thought, oh, maybe it has to be like this. So I'm like, and I'm freaking out because I know people behind me are waiting, and they're like, oh, for dummy, I'm holding up the line, and everyone's probably cursing me from behind me in the line, and I'm like, I'm trying, nothing's working. And then an Air Asia employee goes by, and then I stopped her, and I said, I can't get this to work. And I show her, and there's a timer on it as well. If you can't get it done in time, the system resets. And then suddenly I get, this big clock shows up on the computer screen, says, please wait for the system to reset. I guess I broke it. And then you wait, and then you start all over again from the beginning, and it's, oh, system has to reset. I guess you just tried too many times. And I said to the woman, it's like, I can't, it's not working. There's something wrong. And she looked at me and said, oh, you have to do your boarding pass. It's asking you, like, look on the screen and it says scan boarding pass. And I hadn't seen that. I was moving too fast and I didn't read the screen carefully enough. And it was saying scan boarding pass. It's like, oh, that's why it was going, It was the wrong thing. So then I had to get out my phone and get to my, boarding stuff and open up that. And then I took the thing and it was like, bing. And then my name came up. It was like, okay, that was the first step, which I didn't realize. Now I know, but at that time I didn't know. So you scan your boarding pass, it comes up with your name, and then you go through the prompts to scan the code on your luggage tag. And then that worked, and I put my bag in there. And off it went. Oh man, yeah, that was an adventure and an experience, just to get to that stage, the sky bus adventure, and now the self-baggage check-in adventure. So I was already exhausted. I was ready to turn around and go back to the Nanyang hotel, pay my 10 ringgit tourist tax, and go back to sleep. Yeah. But I had to go on to the next stage. And the next stage, I guess, was not as challenging. Everything was kind of normal from that point. But when you go on one of these budget airlines at KLIA, I was at departure gate P13. And as you move more and more towards the P gates, the P1 to P30 gates, however many there are for these budget airlines, the hallways get smaller and smaller and smaller and narrower. And you have all these people waiting for all these different flights. And this certain amount of stress starts to build up because the walls are closing in on you. It's not a spacious area by the time you get down to departure gate P13, I'll tell you that. So I get down there and it's relatively close to the departure time for my plane. I had this idea that I was going to get to the airport and I was going to have hours to hang out at the airport. But the way everything worked out, kind of the late departure of the sky bus, long time checking in, doing the bags, it felt like there wasn't as much time left as I thought. And of course, airports always surprise you. I forgot about this stage. But you know how you go through immigration and things like that, and then you have to go through security at every point. And it feels like you've gone through security like 7 times or something. It feels like that because you've had to go through security, I guess twice, just to get into immigration area. You go through some kind of a security. And they were weighing bags, by the way. Every single carry-on bag for this Air Asia, or I guess all flights, supposed to be under 7 kilograms. And quite often they just sort of just let people go, they don't really worry about it. But they were weighing every single bag, and a lot of people were being turned away. I have my own scale that I carry with me, so I weigh all my own bags. So I made sure mine was about 5 kilograms for my carry-on. So I knew I would have no problem. I actually had a very small bag. I just had this little knapsack, and I had it on my back. And I wanted them to weigh it because I knew it was 5 kilograms. It had my laptop in it and a tablet and camera gear and things like that. And it came to 5 kilograms, which is a fair amount for a little bag like that. But I knew it was under the limit. And I was quite proud of myself, so I wanted them to weigh it and give me a pat on the back. Good for you, sir. You obeyed the rules. But they just kind of looked at that little bag and they said, yeah, don't bother, and they just waved me through. So I didn't even get to weigh it. I had no trouble with immigration leaving from Malaysia, which was great. Just stamped me out. I went through. And then I had something to eat in the departure area, relaxed a little bit there, and maybe that's where a lot of the time went. So like I said, it seemed like I was like getting to my departure gate right when the flight was boarding, when I thought I would get there way, way too early. But at that point, in my head, I was just walking to my departure gate. Just like go to P13, go down this hallway, you're at P13. But then you turn a corner, it's like, one more security thing. You know, it's like every time there's always one more that I don't anticipate. And of course, going through security, you've got to do the whole empty your pockets thing. And I'd already done it so many times where, you know, you take your smartphone, you put it in your bag, you put your wallet in your bag, you might have some coins, you got to get all the coins out. You might have, I got a little key on a string around my neck, and I take every piece of metal, my watch, you take everything off and you put it all away, and you go through security, you know, and you get out the other side, and then you kind of re-armor on the other side. You know, you sort of put everything back because you kind of need your wallet and you need your watch, and you put your watch back on, wallet back in your pocket, and you get all organized again. And you walk 10 feet and it's like, oh, another security. Everything's got to come off again, put it all in there, and then it goes through again. So I've gone through all of that already. Now I'm in the P13 hallway, which is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Lots of people. And by the time I got to P13, they were shouting last call, you know, final call, flight AK something 49, 249, maybe AK 249 to Pekanbaru, final call, final call. I was like the last person getting on the plane, which is quite rare. I thought, final call? What the heck is going on? And they asked to see my vaccination certificate. Before I got into the airport, like got into the immigration and departure area, they asked me about vaccinations, like how many. They asked, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Indonesia. And I guess that triggered the vaccination thing, because Indonesia is still relatively strict, I guess. And they says, okay, how many vaccines have you had? And I said, 3, because I had the 2 originals and a booster. And I guess that satisfies the regulations in Indonesia. So as long as you have 3, you're good to go. And then when I got to departure gate P13 and I'm showing them my ticket, and the woman kept saying something to me, saying something. And I kept replying. Like, you know how your brain is hardwired? You're listening for things that you're expecting to hear, especially if someone is speaking in an unusual accent. You may not actually hear the words they're saying, but you're expecting them to ask you certain things, and you're listening for certain words. And I guess I wasn't listening for vaccination certificate. And that's what this woman kept saying to me. You know, she wouldn't let me go through the line. She kept saying vaccination certificate, vaccination. And I said, what do you need from me? Vaccination certificate, vaccination. She pantomimed, getting an injection. Like, oh, you need to see that. No one has asked me for that. Ever since I got it, I jumped through so many hoops to get my vaccination certificate in Thailand, but no one has ever asked me to see it until this time. So I said, oh, you need to see that. And of course, I had it in my passport pouch, and I got out my yellow booklet with a vaccination certificate. And, I showed it to her, and she looked, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, sir. You can go. So yeah, you had to show my certificate, and I was the only one. Nobody else had to show one. Like, I watched all the other people go through. Nobody had to show a certificate except for me. I don't know why that would be. Yeah, that was kind of a puzzle. Total chaos getting on the plane, of course. I don't know why it's so hard for people to get on a plane and deal with their luggage. But man, it's a thing. Not that many people seem to be getting on, but it takes such a long time to work your way down the plane, because every single person, when they get to their seat, it's like a 20-minute ordeal for them to settle in, get their luggage put away and get into their seat. And I've done this enough times that I have the mental attitude of just do it fast, get it done. And if you have to do something, like if you have to sort of pat your pockets and find your phone and do this, don't stand in the aisle while you're doing it. If that's your seat, move. You can still stay standing up, but move into your seat to free up the aisle so the people behind you can keep going. But most people wouldn't do that, and they were just blocking the aisle. It took forever for everybody to get on that plane. Seemed like it. I had an aisle seat, 25D. I like to sit on the aisle if I can, just to, if I need to go to the bathroom, I don't have to bother anyone to get up and move around. I like the aisle seat. I don't really need to look out the window anymore. I've seen the clouds, seen the wing. It's very impressive, but I don't need to see it on every flight. So I sit on the aisle, and there was one man sitting in the middle seat, and then the window seat was empty. This plays into the story I'm about to tell, the next tale, the next adventure that I had. So I'm trying to be very friendly and polite, and so I saw that man. I kind of indicated, this is my seat. I'm sitting beside you. I feel like I always have to apologize to people. Like if they are sitting in the middle seat and the seat on both sides are empty, that person is probably very happy and hoping that no one sits in those seats. And of course, when I show up, for that person, I must be a disappointment. It's like, so you're okay. I don't have all the space that I thought I was going to have. So I feel like I always have to apologize when I take my seat. So anyway, I'm very apologetic to this man. I'm very sorry, but this is my seat. I have to sit beside you. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so I sat beside him. He was from Indonesia. I tried to chat a little bit with him in Indonesia, but we didn't get very far. I couldn't really understand anything that he was saying. But anyway, so I settled into my seat, and all these people are still coming on, which struck me as really weird, because when I was going onto the plane, they were final call, final call, final call, rushing around, final call. And yet after I took my seat, there was still a lot of empty seats on the plane, and then suddenly people just kept pouring onto the plane, just more and more and more people. I was like, wow, for final call, there's a lot of people showing up after, like way after final call. And at one point, a big family came trundling down the aisle. It's like, holy cow. It was like great-grandmother, grandmother, grandfather, great-grandfather, grandchildren, mother, father, niece. I mean, it was a tribe, and everybody had giant bags, and they weren't like nice little suitcases that slide into the overhead compartment. These were, people who used whatever bag they could find, shopping bags that they wrapped up with rope and tape and just all kinds of weirdly shaped things, and everybody was carrying a bunch of these bags. And it's like, oh man, this is something else. So this whole group came along, and they stopped right beside me, this whole big family, this tribe of people. And they're in the aisle, and they seem to have no clue where any of their seats were. There was like this confusion in the air. They're looking at their passports, they're looking at their phones, they're looking at this, and a lot of shouting, a lot of pointing, a lot of looking around. They couldn't figure out where their seats were. And then they eventually settled down. Everybody sat down. And then, for some reason, the man of this family, the main guy, and he was, not to put too blunt a word on it, he was fat. He was a fat man. His legs, like one of his legs, was the size of my whole body. He needed a seat for one leg. He was that wide. He was a big, big man. And he was sitting behind me in the aisle seat, and then he got up, and then he came to stand beside me, and he spoke to the man in the middle seat and kind of gestured to him to move over. And this man in the middle seat moved over to the window seat, and then this large man indicated that now I should move over to the middle seat. He just sort of stood up, and he was like telling us what to do. He said, okay, you move over to the window seat, and he pointed at me and said, okay, you move over. He wanted to sit in my seat on the aisle. And I understood that at first, he just wanted, like, his seat, for whatever reason, was the middle seat. And he told the middle seat guy to move to the window because he wanted to get into his seat. And I thought, oh, for Pete's sake, how are you going to fit in here? Like, how? And so I got up out of my seat, and I stepped into the aisle to let him past me to go to his seat. I'm not happy about it because he's not going to fit very easily. But then he kind of stopped me and said, no, you move over, you go there. He was sort of gesturing and physically kind of, no, over there, you go to the middle seat, I'm going to sit here. And the way I don't mind doing that for people. Like, I've done it many times in my life where people ask me to switch seats with them. And if I understand the reason for it, I'll do it. I remember there was a woman who had a young child, and I happened to have the window seat. And she asked me, like, do you mind if my child takes the window seat? First time on a plane, very excited to look out the window. Absolutely. I move. Or it's a couple and they got separated and they want to sit together. And so, can you move here so that I can sit there beside my wife? Something like that. Absolutely. I'll change. I've even moved into a middle seat, which is far more uncomfortable for me, just to give other people, a happy place to sit. So I'm not adverse to doing that. But this guy, I didn't understand what he was talking about. He was already in a seat beside his wife, behind me. That appeared to be his assigned seat. So why would sitting in my seat benefit him in any way? I didn't see any reason for this change. And the way he did it, very abrupt, very domineering, like just ordering us around. You move, now move, I want to sit here. And I just played dumb. I mean, he couldn't speak English. I couldn't really communicate with him, but I indicated to him that's my seat, this seat here. And I had booked it in advance. I chose it deliberately because it was an aisle seat. I had paid for that. On AirAsia, you can choose whether to pay to choose your seat or have it assigned to you. And I paid an extra fee so I could pick an aisle seat. That's my seat. And I'm a bit of a rule guy. I like systems. And if your assigned seat, 25D, is assigned to my name, I want to sit in my assigned seat. Barring any weird circumstances, that is my seat. I would like to sit in my seat, the one on my ticket. And I kind of pointed at the seat and I said, that's my seat. I don't really want to move over to the middle. Like, why should I? This is my seat. And I had no idea what he was talking about, what he was doing. And then he kind of turned to his whole family group and he said something about boule. He's like, the boule doesn't want to move. And again, I don't know why the boule was supposed to move. I didn't understand the situation at all, especially because after I insisted on remaining in my seat, he sat down again in his original seat, aisle seat, beside his wife. So why would sitting in my aisle seat benefit him in any way? Total mystery. I have no idea what all that was about. So then he sits down again. And I'm like, okay. So I get back in my seat, I buckle up my seatbelt, I get all arranged, I'm comfortably in there. And then a few minutes later, he's back up again and he's standing beside me. And now he's pointing at the middle seat because he wants to go into the middle seat beside me now. He's moving from his aisle to my middle. I'm like, I have no idea why you're doing this, but whatever. So I get up again and get out of my seat, go into the aisle, and then this giant elephant man gets in and sits down in the aisle seat. And like I said, his legs were so huge. His left leg took up most of my seat. There just wasn't enough room to contain his legs. So now I'm like sitting like this the whole flight. I'm like pushed over into the corner, Luckily, it was only a 1-hour flight. So, yeah, this flight did not come together for me. It was not an easy flight. It was only 1 hour long, but by the time we landed in Pekanbaru, I felt like I'd been in the air for 10 hours. It had been a long, long trip. It really had been. Some small adventures on the Pekanbaru side, so we landed it's an international airport in Pekanbaru. Interesting airport because it's right inside the city. Most airports these days, of course, are 20 miles outside of city limits, but this one is like right downtown practically. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, it lands right in the plane lands basically right in the middle of the city. So we land there. Total chaos, getting off the plane, of course, all that luggage, everything going on. One interesting thing I hadn't mentioned yet, towards the very end of the boarding, way after the final call, two women came on board, and they're Indonesian women, and they were carrying bouquets, like big ornamental bouquets, but they weren't made of flowers. The bouquets were largely made out of money, like Indonesian currency. So, I got it. They were carrying them very carefully, and then they had to find room for them in the overhead compartment. So I got a good look at them. And then when we were getting off the plane, I got an even better look at them because they were right in front of me, and they were holding them, like a bride holding a bouquet of flowers. And I could look right down into them, and all the flowers were made up of like 100,000 and 50,000 rupiah notes that had been curled around to look like flowers. So the whole thing was filled with money. Both of them. One was pink, one was blue, and then they were all artfully designed so that, all the flowers were made out of money. And it looked real to me. All the currency looked real. I mean, I'd have to get it out and, really look at it to know for sure. But from what I saw, it all looked like real money. So there must have been some kind of a wedding or ceremony in Kuala Lumpur, and then they were given these bouquets as, part of a wedding gift or something. Maybe it's a tradition in Indonesia that I don't know about. That was kind of interesting. So we go off the airplane into the airport in Pekanbaru, and I have to get the visa on arrival. There's a separate window for that, 500,000 rupiah, or $35 US. You just hand over the cash, and they give you a little receipt. And that is you have to show the receipt when you get to the immigration window, and they take the receipt, and then they stamp the official visa into your passport. So when you go to the visa on arrival window, you don't actually get the visa there. All you get is the paper receipt saying that you have paid for the visa on arrival. And then when you get to immigration, then you get the actual sticker, I really like the system in Indonesia now. I've talked about this in the past, where if you're given 30 days or 90 days or 60 days, you generally have to calculate yourself when the expiry date is, and it's very easy to make a mistake. But in Indonesia now, they have a system where the computer prints out a little sticker. So you get the official visa stamp or visa sticker, but then you get a second sticker which just has a list of dates and facts and figures. And it says, the date you entered, how long the visa is good for, and the day it expires, and it tells you whether or not the visa is extendable. So it has all the information in a little white sticker that they put on top of the visa sticker. So it gives you all the relevant information, which I think is kind of cool. On the downside, when I got into the airport and I'm heading towards the immigration lineup, then they handed me the customs form. It's like, oh, come on. Because normally you get that on the airplane. They go up and down the aisle and hand out the forms, immigration or customs forms, whatever you need to fill out. And then you can do it in comfort. You pull down the tray and get out your pen, and you can fill out the form while you're sitting on the plane. But they didn't do that, and they gave it to me in the immigration area. They gave it out to everybody. And then I was staring at this thing. It's like, oh, for Pete's sake, now I've got to fill it out here, like in the middle of all this chaos. And it was really hot. It was kind of an exposed area. It wasn't air conditioned. I'm sweating, and I've got this piece, this thing. Then it's all in Indonesian, so I have to get my phone out, and I'm doing Google Translate line by line to see the information that they want, and I'm trying to fill it out. You can see people all over the place. They're holding it against their leg or against their arm, and they're trying to fill out this form. And of course, people pushing and shoving. You're in a lineup, and it's very stressful. And I'm getting very hot and very sweaty. I can feel myself heating up because I just landed back in Sumatra, very hot and humid. So I'm in the lineup, and then I get a tap on the shoulder. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Like, yes. I said, come with us, please. And they pull me out of line, and they bring me all the way back to where they have the temperature scanner. How they have a machine that scans everybody coming off the plane, and you can see whether they have a fever or not. And I'd already walked past it. Everybody had walked past it. But I guess they wanted to take a second look at me. And then, excuse me, sir, come with us. And they brought me all the way back to the scanner. And then I was the only person there. And they made me stand in front of the scanner while 3 men crowded around the monitor. And they're looking at whatever image showed up on their monitor. And they're having this long discussion, pointing at the screen and looking at me and pointing at the thing. And I thought, what the heck is going on? Like, was I burning up? I knew I was a little bit nervous because I knew I felt hot. I was sweating because this place wasn't air conditioned and there's stress, and I'm trying to fill out the customs form while getting the visa on arrival, and I'm balancing my passport and this and that. And I got out one pen, but that pen wouldn't work, so I had to dig around in my bag, get out a second pen and fill that one in. And so yeah, I was feeling, kind of hot and sweaty. So I thought, man, am I triggering the scanner now? I know it doesn't really work that way. I mean, even if you're sweating, it doesn't mean your body temperature is like 110 degrees or something like that. It doesn't work that way. But these guys seemed very, very interested in my temperature. And they made me stand there for quite a long time. And in fact, they never dismissed me. I just stood there and stood there and stood there, and they're all there talking and doing things. And then I'm waiting for them to say, oh, okay, sir, you can, but nothing. They never looked at me again. And then I'm filling out the customs form, and I just slowly start sliding away, just like, okay, can I leave? Can I, I'm moving slowly away from the scanner to get back in line. And I figure, well, they'll shout at me if I'm not supposed to leave yet. And I just sort of sidled off, and that was the end of that. So I have no idea what that was all about. And I got through immigration okay. I mean, there was some tension there. They pulled a switcheroo on me, which I thought was kind of funny, because I was in the lineup, and the lineup was moving very, very slowly. Each immigration officer seemed to be very serious about their job, and they were taking a hard look at everyone, and their documents. So the lineup was moving very slowly, I thought. And I was counting, how many people were ahead of me in the lineup before it went to the immigration counter. But turns out there was a zigzag. I didn't see it in advance. So I finally got to the front of the line, but there was a barrier there. So I got to the front of the line, but then I had to move over this way and then move all the way back again and zig this way and all the way to the front, zig this way and all the way. It's like the lineup was like 10 times longer than I thought it was, because it did this unexpected zigging and zagging. I thought I was at the front, but I was still way, way back in the lineup. But it was finally my turn, and I was, as always, I'm always the last person to go through everywhere. I take my time, and I don't rush, and I don't mind being the last person. So anyway, I was way at the back of the line. Things were calming down by the time I got to the front, and handed over my passport. And then the immigration officer did this thing that always kind of amuses me, because I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, I had just been in Sumatra, 30-day visa on arrival, 30-day extension. Then I left the country, and now I'm back again. He can see the stamp in my passport, and he can see that I entered through Dumai. I came by ferry. I left by plane. I'm coming back by plane, but to a different city. It's like, what is this guy doing? You'd think it could set off red flags. So I'm a little bit nervous. It's like, are they going to let me in? Are there going to be a lot of questions? Am I going to be detained? Is there going to be an interview? Do I have any, I'd prepared a bunch of documents in advance that I can present to them if I need to. So I'm a little bit nervous. And then, so he's going through my passport, and I'm waiting for that signal where he's looked at everything, and now he's decided. He's made a decision. Okay, I'm going to let this guy in. And you can sort of see it in their body language. They go from investigative mode to, okay, this is all right. And then they take your passport and they put it in the scanner, and it scans it. They tell you to do your fingerprint scan thing, stand here to get your picture. No, back up. No, back up. You have to back way far away from this camera to get your picture. You're waiting for all that to happen, and you can kind of see it in their body language. So I'm watching this guy, and I see him relax. It's like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to let this guy into Indonesia. But then he reset, It was like he thought better of it or something, and he's like, "Oh, okay, let me think about this for a second." And he started going through my passport again, page after page after page, looking. You know, he looks up at me and going through the page, and I'm trying to look as innocent as possible. You know, I'm just sort of standing there, you know, like I don't have a care in the world, trying to be the perfectly innocent man. I'm not trying to do anything that might be viewed as suspicious. I'm trying not to look nervous. And then he does it all over again. He does this whole investigative routine, looking at everything, and then I can sort of see him, okay. And he did take my passport and put it on the little scanner they have there. And I thought, okay, now the system is going to begin. He scanned my passport, and then he kind of took the passport off the scanner, and then he stopped again. And it's just sort of like looking at me, you know, furrowed brow, flipping through my passport. And I thought, boy, this guy's thinking a lot about me. But eventually, he decided I was okay, and then stamp, sticker. He had trouble putting in the stickers for some reason. I couldn't really see what he was doing, but something got weird, bunched up or something. But he got it all done and handed me my passport, and 30 days in Sumatra, visa on arrival. So that worked out well. From there, of course, I had to go through customs. And again, the customs was quite serious, which kind of surprised me. These days, customs seems almost like a formality. You know, you fill out that customs form, asks for a lot of information, but then they just sort of take it from everybody and just, yeah, thank you. And you feel like after they're done, they got a big stack of them and they're just going to toss them in the nearest bin. They don't seem to be that important anymore. But this guy, he took my customs thing and then he stopped me and he held me there and he went over everything. You know, he read my name aloud. So this is you, sir, this is your name. And I put down the name. I'm staying with a friend at his house, but having done this in the past, I know that does not work. You can't tell immigration or customs that you're staying at a private residence. They don't like that. So I put down the name of a hotel. I figured out a hotel in advance, and I wrote down the name of a hotel. This is where I'm staying in Pekanbaru, and he read the name of the hotel. So, oh, you're staying at the Windstar, sir? That's where you're going to be staying in Pekanbaru? Yes, that's where I'm staying. Okay. And then he went through the list. You don't have any of these. You know, you have to say, like, all the things you're not supposed to have. You tick off tidak, no, tidak. He says, so you don't have any of this, you don't have this, you don't have this, you have none of this in your luggage? I says, no, I don't. And he, okay, sir, thank you very much. But yeah, he was quite serious about looking me over. And then I go through the final, to enter Indonesia, now you have to go through another x-ray machine, you know, through another security check. And they put my bags through there, and I can see the conveyor belt, you know, trundling along. All the bags from everyone else just go straight through. And then I see my knapsack go in, my small one, and then the conveyor belt stops. And I thought, oh boy, that's not a good sign, because they could see something in my bag that they didn't like. They've got the x-ray up, and they're all crowding around the screen, and they're all pointing at it and looking and talking. And then the conveyor belt started to move, and my bag came right to the end. You know, they have those rubber strips, and I could see my bag straps and the color of my bag just kind of poking through the strips. And I'm like, come on, like, get out of there. And then it went into reverse, and they sucked my bag back into the machine. You know, it was almost out, and then they just pulled it back in again to take another look at it on the x-ray. And I thought, okay, yeah, they don't like something in my bag. And I had been very, very careful packing. I made sure there's nothing in my carry-on that would not be allowed on board an aircraft or not be allowed inside Sumatra. So I have no idea what they could be looking at. But eventually my bag emerged, but then the security guys came over and said, yeah, sir, we have to take a look inside your bag. And so they asked me to open up the bag, and they were going through it, and they asked me what was inside there. And I said, well, there's a laptop and a tablet. And turns out what they didn't like was the GoPro. And I guess it was the shape of it, because I've got the GoPro and then a grip, and then at the bottom of it, I've got a big hinged clamp. And I guess from a certain point of view, it could look like a gun, like it could look like the handle of a gun. It's all made of plastic. I mean, there's no metal in it, but the overall shape of it, I can see how you would look at it, and it kind of looks like you could hold it like a gun. It has a gun-like shape. And that's what triggered all this concern. And they said, oh, what is this thing, sir? What is this? And, oh, that's a camera. That's a GoPro. And they take it out, and it's like, oh, okay. Put it back in. And that's what the problem was. And to be honest, I guess that's pretty much the end of the story. I was now in Sumatra. I went through immigration, went through customs. Everything was okay. And my friend was going to come pick me up. I switched SIM cards, of course. I had my Malaysian SIM in my phone, and I still had my Indonesian Telkomsel SIM from before. And one thing I hadn't done, I kind of kicked myself over that, is when I left from Indonesia, I had spent all of my credit. Like, I bought data with all the credit on my phone. And then I realized, oh, I should have saved some, because as soon as I land in Indonesia, I won't have any data. I won't have any credit. And if my friend who's coming to pick me up, I won't be able to communicate with him because I won't be able to get on the internet. But it turns out I was very, very lucky, because I just happened to have 150 megabytes of data left over that was still active on my account. I had no credit. I couldn't buy more data, but I had this little tiny bit of data. And when I put in the new SIM, I was connected to the internet just briefly, and just long enough for my friend to send me a WhatsApp message and for me to communicate with him. And we eventually, met up at the airport, and then he drove me to his home here. Had a wonderful meal last night with him and his wife. Beef rendang, very, very good, and a vegetable dish and rice and some snacks and some all kinds of stuff. Really, really good. Yeah, and I slept here. This was my room last night. Nicely air-conditioned room. In terms of telling the whole story, I guess the unusual thing about staying here was their dog. They had, when we showed up in the car, there was a dog in sort of a enclosed area. I thought it was like the garage where they parked the cars. And the dog was in there barking and barking, tail wagging, looked like a really friendly dog, named Joey. My host told me, yeah, that's Joey. And I called out the window, hey, Joey. I like to make friends with dogs if I can. And then I came into the house, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, just chatting with my host and whatnot. And then some doors opened, I guess. An opening was created, and Joey made her way into the kitchen. So Joey just came charging into the kitchen and just started barking like an insane creature. Just did not like me at all. I mean, her tail was wagging, but her body language was really strange. There was something really off about this dog. And I spoke to my host afterwards, and I asked him, is Joey blind? Because Joey would be in the middle of the kitchen and just barking like an insane creature, but it wasn't looking directly at me. She was looking off to the side. I was over here, and Joey was like barking in this direction, not looking at me, but she seemed to be smelling. So she knew something weird was in this room. There was a foreign human being. She could smell me, but she didn't seem able to see me that clearly. She was just sort of like barking in the wrong directions. And there was something about her body language. I thought, okay, don't get near this dog, because it looked like it would bite. I mean, it was just like, it's weird. Like something was off about this dog. Like mentally, it wasn't quite working properly. And this dog was just in the kitchen for what felt like a long time, just barking and barking and barking and sort of running this way and just jittering and shaking and then running to this side and trying to get at me on the other side of the table. But it wasn't quite sure where I was, and it was trying to get there. And then my host was trying to control the dog, but he had no control over it. It was like it would not pay any attention to him at all. And in a Canadian setting, a household pet or something, at this point, the owner would grab the dog by the collar, just grab the collar. Okay, come on, Joey, that's enough. And just drag the dog away and, close the door. But my host wasn't willing to do that. It is a Muslim household. And as he explained to me, dogs, they don't want the dog in the house at all, because dogs are not supposed to be in the house. in a Muslim household, so it was bad that Joey was even in the house to begin with. And it seemed like he didn't want to touch the dog. Like he's not allowed to touch it either. So he's got this broomstick, and he's trying to use this broomstick to sort of, push the dog back towards the door to get Joey out of the room. And he's blocking the dog's progress using this broomstick. But of course, Joey is like, broomstick, like, come on, that's not going to stop me. And Joey just dodged around the broomstick. And this went on for a long, long time. My host was just kind of like running around with the broomstick, trying to keep Joey away from mangling me, I guess. But the dog just would not respond at all. He couldn't control the dog. He couldn't move it out of the room. And this went on for such a long time. And then his wife came back. She was out shopping. And she came back, and then she came in, and she joined the fray. And she was a little bit more methodical about it. She grabbed a big plastic chair, like a blue plastic chair, and kind of used it to sort of pin the dog down and then push it out the doorway. And that finally, Joey was trying to get past that chair too. It did not want to leave the room. It wanted to get at me. And so they got the broomstick and the blue chair, and the two of them are working together, and they slowly, forced the dog back out. At one point, my host tried to lure Joey out with a snack. He'd made a bit of a sandwich with butter and peanut butter and chocolate sprinkles, and cut it up into squares. And he grabbed one of the squares, and as soon as he picked it up and held it up, Joey was like, and he was trying to lure her out of the kitchen with this snack. And then Joey could not make up her mind. She'd like, go for the snack, and then to go for me, and then back to the snack, back to me. But the snack wasn't enough to get her out of the room. But the chair and the broomstick, and they managed to sort of, it was like a lion tamer. You know how lion tamers would use a chair and a whip, and they finally drove Joey out of the room and locked the door. And I spoke to them about that, and it sounded like the chair was a normal thing for them to control this dog. She says, yeah, the chair always works. Like if I get the blue chair, then I can get her out of the room. I just thought that was kind of funny. It's like, okay, it's a weird dog to have in your house. And it was like an odd relationship with the dog. But I guess it's a working dog. They keep it out there to bark at intruders. That's its job, just to bark at anything unusual. But it's not a pet, it's not a household pet in any way. Though they did name it Joey, which is a pretty friendly name. But anyway, Joey was not happy with my presence at all. But they eventually got Joey back out there, and then she quieted down. Yeah. And then we had a very nice dinner together, and talking about our day trip, our road trip today. And I guess, like I said, I'll be staying at this house where my bike is being stored, on the volcano. I'll be staying there for a couple of nights, 3-4 nights. I don't really know. We'll see when I get there how things work out, but I'm looking forward to that. So that is the story of my trip from Kuala Lumpur to Pekanbaru. Yeah, it was a tiring trip, to be honest. Like I said, 1 hour flight, but it took a lot out of me. And I had a really nice night here. I needed the rest. I had a really good sleep here, so that was nice. So that's it. My hosts may be waking up at this point, though I don't hear anyone out there. But yeah, that's it for story time this morning. Yeah, me in airports, things happen that just don't happen to normal people. I don't know why. Or maybe they happen to everyone, but I just sort of focus on them and I notice them. Anyway, it all makes for a good story, I think. And with that, shutting down, and hope you enjoyed that little interlude, little story time on Planet Doug. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be, I assume, a bit of video of this road trip. Yeah, that should be kind of interesting. I'll see you then.